When we're taking notes over the novel, we obviously want to title them. And so we want to capture just some basics really quickly. So first, we want to put the title of the work that we read. Here, it's The Great Gatsby. When you are handwriting a title, you would put it with an underline. But when we type titles of novels, we tend to put them in italics now. The old format was to underline, but now we tend to put them in an italic. This just helps to format what we're seeing and make a difference between a shorter work and a longer work of fiction. We want to put the author, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Hopefully that's not news to anybody. We put his dates of living, and we also put his nationality. This can help sometimes just to kind of reframe our thinking into, okay, is there something I need to understand about who this person is and their background before we start to look at the piece? We also want to put the publication date of the book, 1925. We said this is really important with Gatsby because Gatsby is seen as the quintessential novel of the decade. So it kind of captures that idea and it helps to frame us. So there we have our first kind of 3 chunks put together for this. Title of the work, author, and the publication date. I'm kind of just watching for when the fingers stop tapping. All right, we go to the next step in that, which is the setting. This is where we want to start to capture some of our own understanding. So, first question, where does the book take place and when? So for this particular one, what should we be putting down? West Egg and East Egg. Is that the only place that this book takes place? Mm-hmm. So you notice that we kind of have these 2 questions that are here about setting and then major set pieces. So if I was looking at where does the book take place, I might generalize that setting a little bit more and say New York City. And I wouldn't get rid of everything we just said. I would push it down a little bit just to help us out. And then when does this take place? 1920s, after World War I, but Nick gives a very specific date for how the book kind of works. He tells us that it's 1922, and specifically the book takes place over the course of the summer of 1922. Now, why does that extra bit of information matter? Consider how the book is structured. We start the book off at the beginning of the summer. We seemingly end it at the end. Think about where the climax is. In chapter 7, what does he mention about the weather? It's the hottest day of the summer. So think about if we're kind of tracing the plot along one summer, it makes sense to put the climax on the hottest day of that summer so that then as we get to our falling action and our resolution, it's never as hot as that. Simple trick. Major set pieces. I would say definitely West Egg and East Egg. I would say definitely the Valley of the Ashes, because here's the piece that we can kind of bring in. When we look at literature, one of the things we're going to talk about this week is how does literature make arguments? Because a lot of times we've said that kind of invalidates pieces from a Lang classroom. They go, oh, well, you know, we can absolutely see how it makes arguments. And here's one place. All 3 of these locations represent something and help us to understand some of the ideas in the novel. Take East Egg, where Daisy and Tom live. What kind of people live in East Egg? Old money people tend to live in East Egg. Remember, East Egg is more fashionable. Gatsby and Nick live in West Egg. What does West Egg represent? New money, those people who have gained their money in their lifetime. These ideas help to build some of those arguments in the novel. We did the work with the Valley of the Ashes. What does that represent? Again, think about the people that live there, the Wilsons. Myrtle Wilson can leave and go have fun with Tom, but her husband is always stuck there. We said when we introduced George Wilson, he's always described as spiritless, as almost dead. It's a whole place where they dump ashes, where there's a face that looks out over them. Valley of the Ashes represents death. So notice here, this isn't just about cataloging stuff. We're not just going, hey, tell me what you know about the novel from all the details. We're always trying to extrapolate that little bit extra for our notes. How can we capture our understanding of the big ideas that are present? So here we're still talking with lots of tangible details. Now notice that we're not going to include smaller places that the book takes place, smaller locations. Like we could absolutely catalog everything here. We could be like, oh, they have lunch in chapter 4 in a speakeasy. Oh, chapter 7, they go to a hotel. We don't need to do that. We're not going to worry about that. Did you catch, speaking of the hotel, I don't think we talked about this. They go to the Plaza Hotel. Anybody ever seen Home Alone 2? Same one. So if you're like, oh, really? Yes, same hotel. Mm-hmm. Luckily, they didn't have to run into Donald Trump there. Mm-hmm. We're now going to move on to our next piece, which is to start to get characters in line. This one, I'm going to give you some time to work and talk before we come back together. So some things we want to consider as we list out the characters in the book. First, who are the major characters? Who are the people we really need to know? This may include some characters that only show up once or twice because you feel like they really impact the important meanings of the book. We want to list some basic details. What should we know about them? We don't want to write a book about them, but just some quick details. Remember, these are your notes. You're capturing your thinking for later. We want to think, who do we identify as the protagonist? If you're not sure what we mean by that, a quick Google definition can help you out. Same thing with antagonist. And then think about this. Do any of these characters serve a larger purpose, either in creating an argument in the book or presenting an idea? Feel free here. We're going to take some time to talk if you want to brainstorm with somebody that's sitting near you. We're going to create this list on the board in, well, let's say 5 minutes. It's 8:39. We'll come together at 8:44. Go ahead, see what you can come up with first.
It's strong. Is it like a blonde roast or why does it look like milk? I don't know, but it's strong. The blonde roast is not. I know. I'm just repeating one of the things. I had when she ordered coffee, it looked like mayonnaise. Yes. I'm still making fun of you for the mayonnaise. That literally looks like both of you. That one's better, but not that. That's like a Dijon mustard of some sort. It's got a little pepper. Anyway, I think the is good that we have this because I'm afraid for because screw me, that's why. My cognitive function is an all-time low. Yes, I will see. I found an eyeshadow palette in my grandma's room she's had since I was 6 years old. Oh, it's so expired. I forgot what I spent it here yesterday. Whatever you need, there we go. Yes.
All right, let's start to move the conversation back this way. And if I was going to give you a guide for like, hey, about where do we draw lines on things, I would say that these 8 characters would be the ones that would make my list. Now, there are other small characters that might pop up for single scenes or might pop up multiple times. But for the most part, if I'm looking at, hey, who do I really need to remember to talk about bigger meanings in the novel, I would stick to these 8. What things should I know about any of them that you put down in your notes?
Gatsby basically invented himself and like James Bats was the previously.
Yeah, I would definitely include that original name, that concept of reinvention. Anything else?
His goal to me kind of like is the main thing that's driving the story.
I would agree with you. Anything else you feel like we should know about any of these characters? And remember, we're not looking for, hey, what am I going to remember tomorrow? Ideally, this would be, hey, if I went back and looked at these notes in 6 months, in a year, what would I need to know about these characters that I want to make sure I can talk about? Now I'm going to put this in quotes with her being a golden girl, just because we had talked when we started the book and we watched the biography about Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald had that very early love in his lifetime that kind of pushed him away and gave him this concept that rich girls don't marry poor boys. And then in all of his literature, he returns to this image of this golden girl that his characters are trying to attain and get. She definitely is Gatsby's golden girl here.
Myrtle was boisterous and overflowing with life. It was very, I guess, out of place when she gets about love.
Yeah, so that concept of her having bursting with life, they describe when they introduce her, kind of leads into that death. When she does get hit by the car, they say her chest sort of explodes open. Her mouth seems to be ripped at the corners as though everything has kind of gone. Yeah, if you're looking at me like, what? Like, when they get to her body, they talk about her breast flapping. Like, it's because it's exposed, not just because she was, a little bigger. Like, she left an impression there on that car. Think about it. This is a solid steel roadster that hit her. And when they find it in Gatsby's garage, remember, it's dented up. It's why he has to hide it. So it's a violent death. We're not trying to make a joke about her size. We're saying this is not just like a hit and run where she bounces off of the side and it's just kind of, I've been slayed. This is violent and gross in the nature of what happens. Anything else on any of these characters we should take note of?
Jordan Baker, she's a professional golfer. She's hard to step up, and she's a love interest of mine.
I would maybe also add to the professional golfer, she's a cheat. They allude to it clearly enough, and it helps us to understand her whole impression of how she does things. Oh, maybe I should move this closer so people can see. Hi, everybody. That definitely would be something that I would hit.
But Nick is the protagonist. He's Daisy's cousin, and he lives next door to Gatsby because that was where.
I would definitely agree with you in making Nick the protagonist. It is the difficult part of this book because the book is not about Nick, but Nick is clearly the one that has learned the lesson. And the difference in that definition of a protagonist is that a protagonist over the course of a work has an arc. They change in some way. And so Nick changes. Whether you want to look at that changes, he began by wanting to embrace New York, and by the end he knows that it is not a place for him. If we want to go towards, his understanding of his place in America and the American dream, there are lots of things. Gatsby doesn't change. He is stubborn in the fact that he does not change. He thinks he can do the impossible. If you had to identify an antagonist, this would be a little difficult for this book, because there really isn't a single antagonist that opposes Nick. Instead, you could almost make it more like life is Nick's antagonist. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And by the end of the book, it's not that he's sure of what he wants to do, it's that he's sure of what he doesn't want to do. Yes?
After the antagonist, I was thinking time, change,
Mm-hmm.
feeling lost.
Oh, that's good too. That lost concept. Absolutely. It's easy sometimes to look and go, oh, well, George must be an antagonist because, he kills somebody. So does Daisy. It's not that easy. You see that some of these characters like George Wilson are more a plot contrivance. They're there to mirror certain things. And so think about how in chapter 7, when Tom stops for gas and hears George's story about finding out that his wife is cheating, we create this great parallel structure for the two of them. They've both realized on the same day that their wife is cheating on them. And of course, Tom's in a very particular spot because it's like, hey, I'm the cheat. And now I'm realizing what it's like to get cheated on. Ugh. But that parallel structure helps us to see some things. We can add lots of other details to this and flesh this out. I would encourage you. We're not looking at doing a ton. Even to just have stuff like this, right about where we want to be. But I would look at these 8 characters and kind of go from there. We want to move to the next step. And in doing that, I just got an email. It's good for you to see this date before it hits Canvas. Let's see. So we are going to offer the SAT in school on March 3rd. Huge thing because SAT tests, if you haven't heard or haven't been aware, like to register for the test recently has been incredibly difficult because of the limited seating and the limited options. They do recommend as a junior that you take the test in the spring of your junior year. Now, this is really close to it. I believe, don't take me as fact here, don't take me as fact and quote me later. They will offer this again in the fall of next year. That is going to be a really tight window for you because notice that test is we did it this year in October, and you normally need those scores sent to your college really quickly after that. So this might be a really good thing for you to consider. I will post the information in Canvas. You do have to sign up, but just to put it in your head, it's during the school day. You're already here. Let's see. We're going to go to our next step. Once we do characters, we want to start to look at the bigger ideas and arguments that are present in the book. And so we're going to just take a second for you to brainstorm here. I know that you have talked about themes ad nauseum probably in your school career. Time and again, plenty of times. Take a couple of minutes and just brainstorm for yourself. What are the big ideas that you think this book has present in it? And then we're going to collect those on the board at 8:56. All right, let's start to collect some of those ideas that you have. What are some of the big themes, ideas, or arguments that you see presented in the text?
Trying to repeat the past.
What else?
Maybe American dream.
Uh-huh. Others. Remember, they don't have to be super specific to be a theme. It's just an idea that's present in the text.
What sucks? Everyone dies.
Love and death.
Money.
What?
Money.
Money. I would absolutely agree.
That seems like that's if things go on behind closed doors instead of open public now.
Okay, so not quite rumors, but like,
The dirty laundry is not everyone.
I'm going to put dirty laundry exposed. And then I'm also going to add rumors too, because remember, a lot of what people think they know about Gatsby is all based on rumors and conjecture and all of those pieces. If Nick is the protagonist, and through the course of the novel he comes to understand himself, we can definitely say that identity is a big part of it. No, but it should be. Anything else you would like to add? Read. Yes, I have adultery,
Oh.
but right along the same lines there, infidelity. Now, by no means are we trying to say, hey, this is a list of every theme that's in the book. No, good literature is going to have lots of thematic importance. It's going to hit on lots of big ideas and have something to say about it. And this is where we want to kind of take this concept as we move through the week. Let's see. When we look at literature, right, we said that a lot of times why it gets left out of the conversation in terms of argument is that it's really hard to put your finger on purpose. I can dig up Fitzgerald's bones and I can put him in that chair and you can ask him all the questions you want. What was the purpose of this? And I can work his mouth like a little puppet. Well, not his mouth, his skull. But we don't know. And so a lot of times that invalidates, to some people, a novel as argument because they go, well, you can't know the purpose. Except that we can. If we look at how a theme is presented, we're basically looking at how an argument is constructed. Consider love. Love is a theme in the book. We have characters that are in love, different stages. We see it presented in different ways. Well, it's not so easy to do that this year with, masks and COVID and all that. So think back to last year. Think about how you would walk through the crowded hallways of this school and you would see lots of different couples. Some of them you would look at and go, how? How does that work? Others you would look at and go, no. Just no. Others you might look at and be like, ew. No. And then others you go, hey, look, like they get it. There's something there. Love looks very different in each different relationship. You have probably looked at a couple at some point and just in your own head been like, why are they together? All they do is argue. All they do is bicker. Who would want that in their life? That doesn't make any kind of sense to me. In the same way that love looks different in lots of different relationships, novels approach their statements about love in different ways. Not just in how they present the characters, not just how they present the relationships, but also in how the things resolve and how we see things come about. So our purpose when we look at themes isn't just to go, oh, I can name a bunch. Look, I made a list. It's also to then go, if we're looking at it from the perspective of an argument, what does it have to say about the topic? And so for your notes, that would be a suggestion to push in the next few days, and we do have time, but to look at it and go, okay, how do we make these, what does a book have to say about it? And especially when you look at a couple like, even Nick and Jordan. Look at how through the book we've kind of said, it doesn't seem like Nick is particularly interested in Jordan. She's just a placeholder to some degree. It's almost like, well, I'm alone and she's kind of interested, so why not? So as we go, think about like how we can start to make what are called thematic statements. Single sentences where you give that main idea. What does the book have to say about economics, adultery, social status? I want to make sure we have a chance to get to this next point too, so that we can talk a bit about it. We don't want to leave off symbols and motifs. Let's start with symbols. You know what a symbol is. You've been taught how to recognize them in literature. I always give the caveat, make sure you're not symbol hunting. School teaches you in a weird way. We give you really good pieces of literature and we kind of model for you, hey, look, it's got a symbol. Here's how you see it. Here's how it builds meaning. We kind of create this weird thing that then you expect, well, every book must have a symbol then. Not necessarily. We want to see that there has to be that investiture. The author has to actually build that meaning in. What are some symbols that we have in the book? The green light. Absolutely. That green light is really important in how it builds in that meaning. And he takes the time to invest that meaning in. Let me show you Gatsby reaching for it. Let me show Gatsby explaining it. Let me show it at the end, making the connection with the American dream. Any other symbols that you would see? The Valley of Ashes, I think, has that bit. Joanne, were you going to say something different?
I was gonna ask, what would weather be?
Weather would be a motif, and this is that great difference. So a motif is a recurring idea that pops up, but it might not have a definite, like symbolic one-to-one meaning. So notice that with weather, we use it to mirror emotions, but it's not like rain always has to be this. Doesn't have to be sadness all the time. It could be emotional turmoil. Heat doesn't always have to be anger. It can just be a rising tension. And so we want to be weary of being able to see the difference sometimes in a motif and a symbol. I would say if we had these, you would be good. We could definitely build in further things. We could talk about, oh, Gatsby's house is a symbol. I don't think that's a wrong read of the book. I think it definitely is. He takes the time to build it. But if you can't necessarily talk about it, I don't think you should be looking to put it on your notes, because then you're going to go down the line, look back at your notes and go, what? I don't remember that. Peyton.
Would the eyes of Dr. symbol?
I definitely would agree with you there. Those eyes of Eckelberg can really represent, in a lot of ways, God, and it makes statements that kind of relate to the lost generation. They have pushed God off to the wasteland. They don't want to think about religion. They don't want to consider it because they have such a cynicism. It's why the eyes aren't fresh and nicely painted. They're kind of forgotten and out there in this place. As we look at building these notes, notice that have we reinvented anything today? We haven't said anything new. But what we're doing is capturing our understanding in the moment, because as we go down, we want to make sure we still have good things that we can refer to. If you want to take a picture of the board, feel free.